Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the Totally Indian Football Show. I'm your host Siju, and yes, we are back again after a few weeks of break. Thank you so much for your patience. But while we are back, and I just want to say I'm joined by amazing person, cracking off an episode ahead for you, all of you guys, especially Mumbai City FC fans, as I am joined by the head coach of Mumbai City FC, Des Buckingham, and we talk about his journey. He recently also completed a year being in India, and he's finally happy to probably witness fans in the stadium, especially the first game coming up in the home ground of Mumbai City FC on Saturday against Odisha. So we talk about the upcoming game, the game that went by against Hyderabad, and a little bit more about Coach Des that gives us an insight into his journey so far and his character as well. So please stay tuned till the end, and we also have a fun segment in between. Hope you enjoy the episode. Thank you so much. I'm joined by the one and the only Des Buckingham, the head coach of Mumbai City FC. And I may sound very polite because I mean poised and very precise in my wordings, but you don't know what's happening off the record. So this is something I have to sound proper and professional on record, but it's all jitters and butterflies within me. But coach, welcome to the show, and thank you so much for joining on the Totally Indian Football Show.
Absolute pleasure to speak with you, and thank you for making the time to have us on.
Great. Now let's kickstart with things since we are in the middle of the season. Quite early, but did see Mumbai City play against Hyderabad, and what a thriller game that was. 3-all finish against Hyderabad FC, playing away from home, but you still had some fans come there to support. How is it finally, for you to be Indian football, but it was like a whole bubble set up, and finally to see the fans and some kind of noise around, not the fake noise, but the real noise in the stadium by the fans. And what was that first instance for you to experience that?
I think that was largely, and one of the reasons that I came to India was to experience exactly the type of environment that we had at that game. We had, I think, 200 or 300 people, our own fans, that had organised, the club had organised some transport to get them up from Mumbai to Pune to help support us. And to have that back in, and that's away from home for us in that game. I think we put on a show as best we could, both us and Hyderabad, and I think they were entertained for a 6-goal thriller, I think it was called. And I can't quite say that it was a thriller on the sideline for me and Manolo, but a very exciting first game up against a very good Hyderabad team, obviously the champions. And it's a good start for us. And we're now looking forward to getting back to Mumbai, playing our first home game for 2 years in front of Odisha, and hopefully welcoming a lot more of our fans back into that stadium.
Right now, in the preseason, and you've been working with this team for almost a season now, and you know the people, even the new ones who've come in, you've had time to spend with them. If I had to ask you, I know it's too early to say all of these things, or ask rather, but did you get a glimpse of what you are trying to achieve with the team in the first game? Or, I mean, what are your takeaways from the first match as opposed to probably what you were training for?
Yeah, the beauty and the benefit, I suppose, of being in this role now. It was 1 year ago yesterday that I arrived into India. So just celebrated a 1 year anniversary here in India. So the benefit of that is, like you said, the relationships that I've been able to form, both with the staff and the playing group. You get to know them very well. And not just that, they get time to understand how we want to operate and how we want to play. And the more that we can involve them in that, the more that they can learn. So rather than just changing game to game, we involve them in the process of the learning. So when we do take to the field, they remember it and they can consistently do it rather than maybe one off doing it. So in terms of the first game, we've seen glimpses all the way through from the 7 games we had in the Durrand Cup. We certainly see some really good glimpses of that against Hyderabad, especially in the goals that we did go on to score. But it's now important that we only have 19 guaranteed more league games, that we need to string those consistent performances together a lot more throughout the 90 minutes to make sure we come away with more points throughout the season.
Right. Now, you mentioned that you were looking forward to come to India and experience what's here. So, yes, the 1 year that you were here, I mean, congratulations. And we are happy that you were here for a year and now we get to see more of you on that. And but what I wanted to ask was, what the expectations that you came with? Yes, I mean, leaving aside the bubble and all of the other issues that were not in our control, but how do you gauge now, having been here for a year, continuing with the same team, and now you will finally witness the fans coming in? So how do you has Indian football met the expectation that you had in mind while you were coming?
Yes, I think, celebrating a year in a job here in India, there's only three head coaches, myself, Manolo at Hyderabad, and Ivan at Kerala, who actually started last season with the same clubs. So just to have a year in India and be able to continue into a second year is, and I say that when I talk about being here a year, because this is the third country that I've now spent some good time working and living in. I've spent time in New Zealand. I spent 6 years there, and I spent just under 2 years in Australia as well. So I think the point that I'm trying to make is being here a year now, rather than coming in and expecting things to be a certain way. I take the type of approach in all of the jobs that I've had. You come in and you try and understand a little bit more about the country. You try and understand a little bit more about the culture, and then the football culture on top of that. And then you try and understand the differences that do exist and within different types of people. And that for me in the first 4 to 5 months was so important in the time that I spent here. And being in the bubble really helped gain that understanding and gain it probably quicker than if we hadn't have been. So that's allowed us to build relationships. That's allowed me to really get a good understanding of how things do operate here. And now the one thing I am learning as we go is the excitement around getting around the country, because we were based in Goa for the whole of last season. But the excitement for me now is going and experiencing the different parts to the country and the different things that come with that.
Right. Now, let's get to know a little bit more about you and your thoughts on what you've done in the past. And I mean, I'm referring to an article, shout out to Shahid and the team at The Scroll for doing this lovely story on you, where now I'm going to take some snippets from that, where it mentions that you have 20 years of experience with you with regards to teaching, learning new things, and that has also helped you in the craft of coaching. So, when the article also mentions that you were at the age of 21 and you were teaching 16-year-olds in your college. So, what were the subjects that you taught them, and how did someone assign you to teach? How did that opportunity arise?
It started when I finished playing. So I finished playing at 19 years old, and I'd already started coaching part time. And when you grow up in England, as part of your football education at Oxford United, where I was at the time as a player, and because there's a lot of players that don't progress their careers on, as part of the process to that, they make you go through a educational diploma or degree, because they're aware that a lot of players obviously don't progress their careers into professional football. So as part of that, we studied a sports science degree diploma at the college that was linked with the club. And as part of that, I got to know the staff over a 2 year period. And then when 19, I stopped playing. A year after that, there was an opportunity to go in and fill in for a vacancy, a part-time one to start with in terms of lecturing, just to see how I would get on. And that progressed into it progressed into a full-time role of teaching, and that was a whole range of sports science topics from physical fitness all the way through to I can't even remember some of the topics, to be honest with you, but all the range across the sports science degree and diploma, teaching 16 to 19-year-olds. And that was a very into the frying pan, I think, as a young person at 21 at the time, trying to not only establish my very early stages to teaching, but the how to teach, what that looked like in terms of communicating, how people learned, and then being able to work with people and peers that were very similar to my age. But that really helped my coaching journey, and that was something that progressed all the way through a 4 year period.
Right. Now, you mentioned that you stopped playing at the age of 19. So, we consider in a society, we consider that we are still growing and we still have a lot to see and experience to take a decision, right? And at the age of 19, you're probably at the peak who you would want to you love the sport and you want to become a player. But as opposed to that, you probably decided that that's something not what you wanted to do or you were not good at. So you wanted to try something else but stay within the sport. So how did you kind of come to a conclusion in making that decision at that age? It's not easy for most of us to take a decision even at an older age, but how did did you had some mentors to help you around that, or how did you kind of gauge that, okay, this is meant for me and this is not?
Yeah, there's one person that jumped straight to my mind. It's a coach called Mickey Lewis, who unfortunately is no longer with us, but he was my youth team coach when I was at Oxford United. And when you talk about a role model, and then somebody that ended up turning into a mentor over 10 years, the way he could work with people, the way he could engage with players, and the way he could create relationships and really make a difference to young people's lives on the football field was something that fascinated me. And he kind of took me under his wing at a very young age. And that's something that kind of snowballed into what's turned out to be a wonderful career so far. But those early stages were very much down to Mickey taking me under his wing, helping me get into the first field of coaching and what coaching looked like. And then it was my, I suppose, eagerness to learn and just try and understand the things that fascinated me about him as a coach and how he could relate what he knew to the people he worked with that went on to had a massive difference to them, not just on the football field, but in their lives as well. That was something that really fascinated me and something that grew over a 10-year period that I worked with him.
Okay. Now, having gathered so many experiences, and then before I, go on with the point, like shout out to all the mentors and the coaches out there who kind of help people out. So I just wanted to ask you, how has all of this shaped you? Because I'm sure the learnings that has come from all that you've shared right now, you mentioned the point that having an impact, impacting the lives, and that's beyond going the football field. And today we also talk about the importance, or we have sports psychologists talking about looking at players beyond just an athlete and looking at them as a human. So how has all of these practices and your personal learnings helped you, have achieved that, complete or a fully coach, like you're not just a coach that's going to tell a player to shoot from this angle or that, but you're also going to be there as a person for them. So how has all of this shaped you become better?
I've been fortunate to work with some wonderful head coaches, assistant coaches, and support staff since I was 9 to 18 when I started, all the way through to now here in Mumbai. And each of those people that I've worked with have offered something totally different that I've tried to take snippets of and the good bits from and incorporate into the way that I work. And I talk about my values as a person or my values as a coach because for me, they're the same thing. I talk about empowerment. You talk about collaboration of working together with people. And then it's help communication and relationships. And they've been the biggest take-ins. I think when you go through all of my coaching badges, I've been fortunate with the experiences I've had in both the Football League, the English Football League, the A-League, international level, back in the Premier League. Those experiences for football have been wonderful. But the biggest thing, I had a conversation with somebody yesterday, and the biggest thing for me and my take-ins and my learnings that have, I think, shaped me as a person and especially as a coach now, it is about those relationships and how you communicate what you know to the people you work with. Because especially at this level, when you get to the kind of top end of senior football and coaching some top club here, a lot of that is around, I think there's an assumption that you can coach. You can always be a better coach, and there's always a lot to learn, and there still will be. But it's how you work with the people that you spend your time with. And if you can involve them in the journey and you can involve their skill sets, both from a playing point of view and the experiences that they have, as well as the staff we have here, and you utilize a wider set of skills, their skill set, I've found, especially in the last 8 or 9 years, you can take a group a lot further if you involve the people that you work with rather than try and do things yourself.
Right. And, to go back a little more, how did someone, as a boy, young man from Oxford end up in New Zealand? What was that? How was that journey like? And how did that change and shift happen?
Yeah, I grew up in Oxford. It's where my family is still based. But Oxford United was my local club, and it was a club that I started coaching at 18. And I spent 10 years there coaching, and they hugely supported me in my coaching journey. I progressed through the academy in terms of coaching the age groups. I then coached the youth team, then the reserve team, and I ended up in the first team environment in the English Football League at 28, which was, I think, probably one of the youngest, if not the youngest, coach at that level at that time. So at the end of that 10 years, or towards the end of that 10 years, we actually had a visit from the FA. We're looking at what we did and how we did what we did, because we developed a lot of good young players through our system. And I got asked the question, what do you want to do? Because you've been here a long time. You're obviously coaching in the senior space now, but where do you see yourself going? And it's never a question that I'd actually asked myself. I'd actually enjoyed, obviously, living and growing up in Oxford. I'd been afforded some excellent experiences of working through the academy and with the first team at the time. But it did get me thinking about what is it I wanted to do. And as a 29-year-old, I realised that my CV was quite coach heavy. Teaching was at the early stages of that, and that had continued. But coaching, I'd gone through all of my badges, and coaching on my CV was pretty strong. But I had no experiences of anything else really. And I thought if I wanted to progress as a head coach, especially, I needed to gain exposure to things that would offer me those types of things that I'd get exposed to as a head coach. And that was working with budgets, that was managing staff, that was planning and working across a multidisciplinary team. And it was a role that came up in New Zealand. It was a football development manager initially for New Zealand football. And the job role and the job description actually ticked all the boxes for what I was looking for. And at the time, I didn't have a partner. I didn't have a mortgage. Obviously, my family were all in Oxford. But in terms of having any ties, no children, my thought process was, well, this is a job that offers me everything that I'm kind of looking for, and I feel I will need to progress my career. And if I go and it works, then great. But if I go and it doesn't work, then I can always come back. But I think I'd have always kicked myself if I'd have turned down the opportunity to not only move into a job that offered me everything I was looking for, but into a job that progressed into a wonderful 6-year journey, both on the football front, but also on my life front as well. So that was kind of how that role came about.
Great. And, while you were there, you also dabbled into a few other things that interested you, and you kind of learned you are also a certified pilot and a skiing instructor. So, I mean, would you recommend, or rather, we have probably, maybe now today we are talking about taking up doing things outside of football for people who are always either a player or a coach. But as somebody who's done that all and, has also helped you learn better and probably shape you as a better coach, would you recommend that to all the young coaches out there, even players, to try something out and always have their eye out for learning new things?
I can't speak for others, but for me, it was, I progressed through my coaching badges. By 29, I had my pro license. And then I finished my master's degree in coaching whilst I was in New Zealand as well. So I had other things in terms of sport specific things that kept me interested and kept me obviously working at a high level, because you can never know too much. There's always somebody that knows more than you. And I think in the modern game, especially, you have to try and stay in front of as much as you can, because you've got players now that are so experienced and will challenge, and rightly so. So to try and prepare yourself for that is something that I did. But outside of that, I've always had something on the go in terms of trying to keep myself occupied and my mind occupied that wasn't sport specific. And you mentioned ski instructing, that was certainly one. But the learning to fly a plane was hugely outside my comfort zone, and something I actually got talked into. But over a 3-year period and 100 flying hours and 6 theory exams and a couple of flight tests later, to gain a license in something that when I started I had no idea about. I just had a genuine interest in aviation. It certainly helped. When you're in full-time work, I think you can get consumed sometimes. There's a lot going on, especially as a head coach. And to be able to have something totally different to go to that was also challenging and kept your mind ticking over what was different to football, actually offered up a really good work-life balance to me anyway. And it's something that has continued all the way through. I've always had something going on. The only time is now when I don't. But that's something I'm sure we'll take care of soon.
Okay, so a new segment that we're introducing, and fortunately, I have Coach Des Buckingham as my first guest to start off things with. Well, don't worry, Coach. I have a few words that are associated with you, and I'm going to throw one at a time, and you have to just tell me what comes to your mind when you hear the word for the first time. So, Oxford United.
It's family. Family.
Okay. Greg Stewart.
Scottish.
Mumbai, not the club, but the city.
Busy.
Pilot.
Not crashing.
And finally, Odisha FC.
Wonderful team with 2 fantastic players that played for us last year to help create history.
Okay, finally, I have a phrase for you. If you can complete this, what would it be? Coach Des Buckingham will like to be remembered as?
Somebody that helped make a big difference to Indian football.
Brilliant. I think that was a great one to start off things, and thank you for your response. Well, that was indeed a fun segment. Now, moving on to my concluding part is definitely the second big match that's coming for Mumbai City FC against Odisha FC on Saturday. And it's the first home game after many, it actually looks like many years. And the fans are going to be there. So it's going to be the first time that Des Buckingham, coach, would be witnessing that, even the boys in the team, after a very long gap. Coach, let me know, what are your thoughts? What's happening in your brain of yours, and how are you working and going to approach the Saturday's game?
I can't wait. I know the players can't. It's been 2 years since we played at the Mumbai Football Arena. And some of these players that we have here now have never played at the arena, even though they have played for the club for 2 years. So it's one that we're looking forward to. And if the fans can turn up, so we've already spoken around having 300 or 400 in Pune. If we can get the fans behind us and showcase some of the football that certainly we're trying to play and want to play, I'm hoping that we can put on a good show at every home game, not just this one, to keep fans entertained and could come and watch some exciting football.
Great. Thank you so much, Coach, for taking time out, for talking to me, and for coming on to the Totally Indian Football Show, sharing your journey. Congratulations once again. We hope to see your association with Indian football for many more years, and not just the 1 year or the second season that we are seeing you. Hope to learn, gather all the knowledge. I'm sure everyone who's played under you, worked alongside you, has a lot to learn from you. So thank you once again for joining the show.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, and all the very best for the season ahead.
Thank you.
Well, that was that, guys. I hope you enjoyed the episode, and please do follow and subscribe to the Totally Indian Football Show. We are available on all the leading audio platforms, and thank you so much for your patience and love. Continue to support, and we probably might go on a break again, but we'll be back soon with structured and much more better episodes with better people and much more engaging ones as well. Thank you once again. This is me, Siju, signing off.